What if I told you that in the year 1497, a European king literally fed his golden crown to flames, piece by piece, believing fire would reveal the secrets of tomorrow? What if I told you his charred remains were discovered still, wearing what was left of that same crown, melted into his skull like a grotesque metal helmet? Tonight, we delve into one of history's most disturbing tales of royal madness, the story of King Aldric III of Valdoria, a forgotten monarch whose obsession with prophecy led him down a path so dark that even medieval chroniclers refused to fully document his final days. This is a story they tried to bury, a tale so unsettling that it was deliberately erased from official records. But the truth has a way of surfacing, doesn't it? And what we've uncovered will make you question everything you think you know about the thin line between divine revelation and absolute madness. King Aldric III ascended to the throne of Valdoria, a small but wealthy kingdom nestled between what we now know as Austria and Hungary at the tender age of 22. By all accounts, he was initially a capable ruler, intelligent, well-educated, with a keen interest in the sciences and arts of his time. But Aldric harbored a secret obsession that would ultimately consume him entirely: the belief that fire held the key to seeing the future. This wasn't mere superstition. Aldric had spent years studying ancient texts, consulting with mystics, alchemists, and scholars from across Europe. He became convinced that certain flames, when fed specific materials, could reveal visions of what was to come. Gold, he believed, was the most powerful conductor of these prophetic flames. The first signs of his descent into madness appeared in 1495. Aldric began conducting secret rituals in the castle's highest tower, feeding gold coins and jewelry into specially constructed braziers. His servants reported strange, acrid smoke billowing from the tower windows at all hours of the night. King would emerge from these sessions wild-eyed and rambling about visions of wars, plagues, and the deaths of kings. But the gold coins weren't enough. The visions, Aldric claimed, were fragmented, unclear. He needed something more powerful, something more connected to divine authority. His gaze fell upon the crown of Valdoria, a masterpiece of medieval craftsmanship, encrusted with rubies, emeralds, and sapphires, said to contain a fragment of the true cross within its central cross. The crown had been in his family for over 2 centuries. It was not merely a symbol of power, it was considered sacred, blessed by 3 different popes. To even suggest damaging it would have been considered not just treasonous, but blasphemous. But Aldric had moved far beyond such earthly concerns. On the night of September 13, 1496, witnesses reported seeing the king in his tower, carefully removing gems from his crown with a small knife. One by one, he fed these precious stones to the flames. According to the sole surviving account written by his personal confessor, Father Marcus, who watched in horror through a crack in the door, the king spoke to the fire as if it were a living entity. "Show me the face of my successor," purportedly whispered as he dropped a ruby into the brazier. "Show me the day of my death." Another gem followed. "Show me the wars that will consume this land." The confessor wrote that with each stone, the flames changed color, first deep red, then brilliant green, then an unsettling purple that seemed to move with unnatural life. And Aldric watched these flames with an intensity that was described as inhuman, his eyes reflecting the fire until it seemed as though flames danced within his very pupils. But even this wasn't enough. The visions, Aldric insisted, remained incomplete. He needed to feed the crown itself to the fire, not just the gems, but the gold, the sacred metal that had touched the heads of his forefathers. This is where the story takes a turn from mere royal eccentricity into something far more sinister. Aldric began having the crown heated and softened in the castle's forges. Night after night, he would take small portions of the molten gold and pour it directly into his ritual fires. But here's where the accounts become truly disturbing. Witnesses reported that Aldric didn't just feed the gold to the flames, he began consuming it himself. Yes, you heard that correctly. The king was eating molten gold. Medieval texts describe how Aldric believed that by ingesting the same sacred metal he fed to his prophetic fires, He could internalize the visions, make them clearer, more permanent. The court physician, Master Giovanni, documented the horrific effects this had on the king's body. Aldrich's teeth began turning black and falling out. His skin took on a grayish pallor. His hair became brittle and white. Most disturbingly, his eyes began to change color, shifting from their natural brown to an unsettling golden hue. The kingdom began to suffer as their king descended. Deeper into his metallic madness, crops failed, neighboring kingdoms sensed weakness, and rumors spread that Valdoria was cursed. Aldrich's advisors begged him to stop the rituals, but the king had become convinced that he was on the verge of the ultimate revelation, a vision that would show him not just the future, but the very structure of fate itself. The final entry, in Father Marcus's journal, dated March 15, 1497, describes the last time anyone saw King Aldrich alive. The confessor had gone to the tower to make one final plea for the king's soul. What he found defied all rational explanation. Aldrich sat before his brazier, but the crown, or what remained of it, was no longer separate from him. The gold had been heated and reformed, shaped into a grotesque helmet-like structure that appeared to be fused directly to his skull. The remaining gems were embedded in this golden mass-like infected wounds, and the king was still conscious, still speaking to the flames, even as the molten metal dripped down his face like tears. "I see it all," Father Aldrich reportedly whispered, his voice barely human. "Every death, every birth, every rise and fall of every kingdom that will ever be. The fire has shown me everything." The confessor wrote that the king's golden eyes reflected not the flames before him, but scenes of battles, plagues, and catastrophes that had not yet come to pass. Father Marcus fled the tower that night and never returned. 3 days later, when servants finally worked up the courage to check on their king, they found his remains seated before the cold brazier. The golden crown helmet had completely solidified around his skull, creating a grotesque fusion of bone and precious metal. His body was perfectly preserved, as if the gold had somehow prevented decay. But his face was frozen in an expression that witnesses could only describe as absolute terror mixed with profound understanding. But here's the detail that makes this story truly haunting. Etched into the stone floor around Aldrich's chair, burned so deeply that they could never be fully removed, were symbols and text in languages that no scholar of the time could identify. These markings appeared to be prophecies, predictions of future events written in scripts that wouldn't be deciphered for centuries, and the most disturbing part, many of those prophecies have come true. The fall of Constantinople in 1453 predicted the discovery of the Americas described in detail, the Great Plague of London, the French Revolution, even events as recent as the 2 World Wars, all allegedly foretold in those burned stone markings that surrounded a mad king's final moments. The tower was sealed immediately after the discovery of Aldrich's body. The official records were altered to show that the king died peacefully in his sleep from natural causes. The crown was reported as lost in a fire, and Aldrich's brother was quickly crowned as the new king. Valdoria itself would fall to Hungarian forces less than 50 years later. Its capital burned and its people scattered, but the tower remained sealed for over 4 centuries. It wasn't until 1923 that archaeologists finally gained permission to explore the site. What they found confirmed the medieval accounts in every horrific detail. Aldrich's remains were exactly as described, seated before a cold brazier, the golden crown fused to his skull, his body unnaturally preserved. The prophecies burned into the stone were photographed and studied by linguists around the world. The languages were eventually identified as a mixture of ancient Greek, Hebrew, Arabic, and several dialects that shouldn't have been known in medieval Europe. The predictions they contained were precise, detailed, and according to historical records, absolutely accurate. The artifacts were quietly moved to a private collection. The site was resealed, and the entire discovery was classified by the government. The official report stated only that medieval remains of unclear origin had been found, nothing more. So what really happened in that tower in 1497 Was King Aldrich III a madman who poisoned himself with molten gold while chasing impossible visions? Or did he actually discover something in those flames, something that allowed him to see across the centuries, to witness events that wouldn't unfold for hundreds of years? The rational mind says madness. Mercury poisoning from alchemical experiments. Lead contamination from medieval paints. Perhaps ergot from spoiled grain. Any number of toxic substances could explain the king's visions and bizarre behavior. The fusion of the crown to his skull could be explained by the extreme heat of his final ritual, a grotesque accident in his final moments of life. But then we're left with those prophecies burned into stone. We're left with predictions so accurate, so detailed, that they continue to unsettle historians to this day. We're left with the uncomfortable question of whether some truths are too terrible to be fully understood or safely revealed. The tower still stands, though it remains sealed to this day. Local legends speak of golden light that sometimes glows from its windows on certain nights, and of voices that whisper prophecies of things yet to come. Whether these are merely stories told to frighten children or something more substantial, I leave for you to decide. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of this entire tale is this. According to those ancient prophecies found burned into the stone, we haven't seen the last of kings who believe they can speak with fire. The text suggests that throughout history, rulers will continue to seek forbidden knowledge in flames, and that each time they do, the price becomes higher and the revelations more terrible. The next time you see a flame dance in the darkness, remember King Aldrich III. Remember that some knowledge comes at a price too high to pay, and that some crowns are better left unworn than fed to fires that promise to reveal tomorrow's secrets. After all, there's a reason some stories are forgotten, some towers are sealed, and some truths are buried in ashes that refuse to be scattered by time. Sweet dreams.